All right, this is going to be a look at Josh Downs, wide receiver from University of North Carolina. He's another wide receiver prospect that I think multiple teams in the NFL will be looking at in the top 40, 50 selections, somewhere around there. I tend to think he's going to go a little earlier than 40, but I understand there's concerns about the size. He measured in at 5'9", and weighed in at 171 or 172, I think, at the combine. So certainly that's on the low end of the spectrum. I don't look at the projections based on certain characteristics, but I know that they're out there, and in some cases, I understand that they are applicable. I'm not sure that they are in the Josh Downs case. He's extremely talented, and if you look at the top 4 or 5 receivers in this draft, at least 2 of them, Josh Downs and Zay Flowers, are quite small. So, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to say that a guy can't play at the next level when all the film shows you that he can? I think the difference between Zay Flowers and Josh Downs is a little stark in 2 areas that I'll talk about a little bit later. You're talking about a guy in Josh Downs who had consistent impact. He had other, and I've heard some people say, well, why was he at North Carolina? I find those questions kind of ignorant. And off-putting for me. I mean, he could have gone other places. His father played at NC State, and he was heavily recruited there. His uncle, who was Dre Bly, who played in the NFL for, I think, 11 years, was a coach at North Carolina at the time that he committed there. So that was his choice. But look, his younger brother, Caleb Downs, is a safety at Alabama right now, I believe. Haven't checked on that in a while, but I know he committed there originally out of high school. Gifted player, consistent impact. And here's what I mean. 2021, Josh Downs had 8 or more catches in 11 out of 13 games. In 2022, he had 8 or more catches in 7 of 11 games. He's just gifted. He's smooth. Put up incredible numbers the last 2 years, 195 total catches between 2021 and 2022. And very efficient while doing so. I watched 3 games that I charted. I watched 2 other games that didn't chart, just watched them one time through. Again, he measured at 5'9", 171 at the combine, but the film you see he looks small. Like as soon as you fire up the film, and in fact I started watching the film before the combine, and I remember my first thought was he doesn't look 5'11". I think originally North Carolina, or someone, I should say, let me rephrase that. Someone had him listed at 5'11 and 3/4 and like 185. And I remember the first game that I watched, which I think was Notre Dame from 2021, because it's the first game I could get my hands on. I was like, he looks pretty small. He doesn't look almost 6 foot to me. And then sure enough, he's not. But look, his play and his production will make you forget that, in my opinion. First of all, incredible hands. The best hands that I've seen in this draft, in my opinion. I charted 3 games. And when I say charted, I mean I kept extensive notes on every play where he ran a route, every play where he blocked someone at the point of attack, or where he was targeted or was open and not targeted. So you're talking about basically the only plays I don't chart, I don't timestamp, is run plays away from him, or times where it was quite obvious he wasn't getting the football, like maybe a short yardage situation or something like that. I think most of his games I charted 45-plus plays, 40, 45-plus. Incredible hands. Notre Dame 2021, Clemson, and University of Virginia in 2022. He had 1 drop across those 3 games. And that was like a screen concept that we used to call Nike, but a lot of people call tunnel screen. I refer to a tunnel screen as the outside receiver getting the screen to the inside. This is a slot tunnel screen. So we call it Nike, but people have basically you're faking a bubble screen, and then you're coming back to the inside, running underneath the guard, playside guard, and playside tackles, essentially kick-out blocks. It was a short pass because he was close to the quarterback. I would say it probably traveled 11 yards, maybe, and it was thrown pretty hard, and it was a clear drop. That's the only one that I saw. And in the games that I charted and the games that I watched. But look, he's the best, in my opinion, the best hands of anyone I saw in this draft. I just don't think there's any comparison with how smoothly he catches the football. And then, additionally, with his route running, it's very smooth, very efficient, looks almost effortless. Not only does he change directions quickly, change directions instantly in some cases, but he changes speeds often. And I think he's He reminds me of a baseball pitcher who has 3 really, really very good pitches, and he can change, and they're at 3 different speeds. I guess I should have mentioned that. Josh Downs is a very smart, very intelligent player. Going to relate his changing of speeds, however, to at least 2 things, or a couple of things. I'm going to try to. Number one, he plays most of the time, 95% plus in the slot. Now, in 2022, North Carolina lined him up at outside receiver when they went 12 personnel, probably to keep him on the field because he was their best player, number one. But also, I think, to get some film out there for NFL teams of him playing outside. And it's not like he was ineffective there. But in the slot is where he was the majority of the time. And he generally saw the nickel defender, slot corner, nickel safety, whatever you want to call it. It's the same thing. It's the 5th DB on the field when a defense is facing 11 personnel. And in most cases, that meant off coverage. When I say off coverage, I mean 4 to 6 yards off of him, because Josh Downs was generally lined up off the line of scrimmage. And Downs heavily relied on this skip hezi or hesitation release that sets up the nickel defender. Basically, the hezi or skip release gives him a two-way go, at least in the nickel defender's mind. So whatever the nickel defender's responsibility is, be it zone, man, leverage side, match concept, whatever, Josh Downs is giving himself a two-way go. And there was some of the routes that are there that are consistently there for Josh Downs, out routes off of that hezi release. Don't get me wrong, there were some in-breaking routes, particularly like, a little fake to the outside and a pressure cut off the outside foot, and then an in-breaking what looks like slant or maybe underneath route. Some seam or vertical releases, and he catches everything that's in his catch radius. Now, I will say this. I didn't see contested catches. There are people who have told me he's got a high contested catch rate. Again, I've charted 3 games and watched 2 others one time through. I didn't see a single contested catch like a back shoulder fade or a fade in the end zone or a slant with a guy on his hip. I didn't see a single contested catch. I'm not saying he doesn't have that ability. I just didn't see it. I saw tough catches, though. Meaning a catch underneath coverage, and as soon as he catches it, a safety or a corner from the other side is hitting him an instant after he catches the ball. In none of those situations did I see Josh Downs fumble. Did I see the ball bobble at all? Sure hands, and when he catches it, it's stuck there like Spider-Man. Incredible hands. Great awareness along the sideline, I thought, to keep his feet in bounds. Like I said, controls the ball immediately on catches and protects the football on big potential big hits. Seems to be really good at understanding zone coverage. I should say finding open space underneath in zone coverage. I didn't see a ton of deep routes I saw some, don't get me wrong. If you follow me on Twitter, I shared something, I think Friday night. I did see him beating man coverage on a variety of routes, don't get me wrong. I saw him get doubled or bracketed a little bit late in games. Some of the routes that I thought were big for him were typical slot underneath routes, underneath mesh routes, drag concept basically. Corner routes or slot fades like smash. Saw him get overthrown on that twice, by the way. A couple of jerk routes or juke routes, whatever you want to call it. I alluded to it earlier. Hesitation release, pressure cut off the outside foot, and then burst into open space once the nickel defender is kind of hedged too much to the outside. Seam goes. I saw a handful of those also. I saw him be overthrown once, clear overthrow, I should say, and then underthrown to the inside another time that was intercepted, I think. I think he's got the ability to contribute at the NFL level quickly. I do. I do look at some other sites now to see, like, I think it was the NFL.com. I go look for the official combine numbers. So, like, when I search Josh Downs combine numbers, the first result is usually the NFL.com combine results. And on there's a number that is a projection. And normally I think anything above, like, 6.8 or something like that is like immediate starter, and I think his was like 6.5, meaning NFL starter within 2 years. I understand why they differentiate there. I feel like in Arizona, I understand they have Marquise Brown, who's another smaller receiver, but he's got a different style than Josh Downs, in my opinion. I feel like he could play in a system like that. He could play in a system that is, essentially 10 personnel at times, depending on who the tight end is. I think he's got extremely high intelligence, ability to adjust. I think he definitely could have played, and I don't mean to denigrate North Carolina. It's an ACC school. It's a Power 5 school. There's been great players come from there. I know 2 people who were recruited there personally, so I understand the talent level that it takes to be recruited there. I think that Josh Downs' talent level means he could have played at a higher level in terms of some of the SEC schools or some of the Big Ten schools that are big on receivers. And I don't mean that in any way negative towards North Carolina, but certainly their team record, their team results that, has not historically been as good as some of the other teams that, would fall in that category of Big Ten SEC schools that I'm mentioning. Great hands. He gets open all the time in the 3 games I watched. He was available to get the football a lot more than he was targeted, and that's going to be one of the things I mentioned before I talk about the 2, negatives that I think I would see. In the 3 games I charted and the 2 more that I watched, he was open a lot on plays that went down like this. He's open, and if he was the initial read in the progression, the ball would have been delivered. But for whatever reason, he was not. And these appeared to be plays where the quarterback was coached to make one read. And yes, I'm talking about 2021 when Sam Howell was there, who's now with Washington. And I don't know the name of the quarterback who was there in 2022, but I saw remarkable similarities on some of these plays that I'm talking about, where it's one read. The quarterback looks to make one read, nothing's there, and he kind of takes off and goes. And I'm not talking about design draws. These are plays where the quarterback would look to one side, and the helmet would never move from the end zone angle because I have that angle, and then take off running. Were there times where the offensive line was a part of that equation? Absolutely. Where there was pressure and it was understandable. So maybe the quarterbacks in both of those situations, 2021, 2022, were a little bit skittish. No problem. Understand that. But 6 or 8 times I saw him open and available, and the quarterback just kind of take off running a little too soon for my taste and a little bit too soon for the timing. I didn't get a chance to share those plays on Twitter. I'd say in the 3 games I saw and charted and the 2 other games that I watched and didn't chart, 6, 8, 10 times overall that occurred. Another thing that I think kind of depressed his statistics, in my opinion, where the read side was to the other side of the field and the ball was delivered somewhere else, effectively in most cases. But Josh Downs was open in the games that I saw, I would say another 16, 18 times where you're like, damn, he could have got the ball there if you're watching it just from a Josh Downs perspective. So he's a guy that appears to get open often to me. Now, how much that translates to the NFL level, if he gets open, 65% of the time in college, is that number going to stay the same and translate to the NFL 65% of the time? I don't know. He's better athletes, et cetera, but he would have a better quarterback play. There would be better offensive line play on his side, and that's why I say that I think he could have played at some of these better schools in the Big Ten and the SEC, at least the last couple of years with the transfer portal, because he would have been playing with better teammates and wouldn't have been the focal point of the defense as much. Now, the one thing I will say is, despite being undersized, some people would think that is his biggest drawbacks. 5'9", 172 or 171. Like I said, I understand that could be an issue, but there's been plenty of guys succeed at that size, that height. Steve Smith, Tyler Lockett come to mind, right? Zay Flowers falls into the same place. Now, to compare him to Zay Flowers on one level, I have not seen Josh Downs make people miss. I just haven't. In the 3 games that I watched, I didn't see him make people miss. I saw him catch one curl along the left sideline on a 3rd and 8 and then turn to the sideline, but the inside leverage defender was unable to get to him in time, but I wouldn't consider that him making someone miss. I'm talking about situations where he has the ball, there is some space. Now, there might be leverage defenders, so it's not like he's going to get a 30-yard gain anyway, but you could make someone miss and turn a 4 or 5-yard gain into an 8, 9-yard gain. I didn't see that. I just didn't see it. I'm not saying that he didn't do it in other games. He certainly had some monster games. I think he had a 15-catch game, a 14-catch game, and an 11-catch game in 2022. Had a huge game against Notre Dame in 2021, the one that I charted. Kyle Hamilton did not play in that game, by the way. He was already hurt and out for the year. But he doesn't make people miss that I see. You may not share the same concerns if you've listened this long. This one's gone on a little longer than I thought. Maybe I was hoping to hold these at 12 minutes. But that's the in-depth look at him in terms of negatives. You may have concerns about the size. NFL teams might as well. Doesn't make people miss. That's a larger concern for me. And then a third concern that some people may not like. He stops his routes often, and I would say it happens 4 or 5 times a game where the quarterback, and again, this could be related to what I mentioned earlier. The quarterback has extended the play. Maybe the pocket's broken down. Maybe it's a 3-step route concept. He runs his route, and the quarterback extends the play and still moving outside the pocket, and Josh Downs just kind of stops. I mean, it happened 10, 12 times overall, somewhere in that range, maybe 14 in the 3 games I watched. It happened enough that I wrote it down 6 times. So, in my charting, I wrote it down 6 times, and there was another handful where I did not. That would concern me if I was someone trying to draft him early. Is he going to do this in the NFL? No, I don't think he is. I think he was my perception is he was frustrated with the quarterback play in both seasons. Frustrated possibly with the offensive line protection, not allowing the quarterback to get him the football, and in some cases stopped his route when the ball wasn't initially delivered to him on a 3-step concept. 3-step concept, if you're unsure of what I mean, is, ball snapped, 1, 2, 3 by the quarterback, bang, deliver the football. Now, if you're in the shotgun, it's not 3-step trot necessarily. It could be catch the ball, look, throw. Either way, it's quick game. And so, yeah, there's times where you're like, the ball should be out. Quarterback extends the play. It's scramble drill, man. And they're a spread team, in my opinion. They spent a lot of time in 11 personnel. It surprised me. Those would be my concerns. Those 2, stopping the route and doesn't make people miss, more so than size. If I'm drafting someone at 22, if I'm the Ravens, or if I'm drafting someone at, I think it's 26, the Giants. I could be wrong there. A receiver, teams that I think need receiver. And he's this small, I'm looking for someone who can make people miss. I think Zay Flowers gets drafted before him. And having said that, I like Josh Downs, similar to Zay Flowers. I just think that you're looking for someone. In Josh Downs, in my opinion, in the NFL, looks like a singles hitter with some doubles. And Zay Flowers looks like a guy who is going to hit some singles, is going to hit, maybe more doubles than Josh Downs. Maybe he would strike out more if we're using a baseball reference, if you like this. But I think he would hit more home runs. And from what I see with Josh Downs at the NFL level, I don't see a guy who's going to hit a lot of home runs, nor even a lot of triples. I see a singles hitter, a very good one. In a spread system. To compare him to JSN, I think there's a lot of similarities. I think JSN, even though there's concerns about his 40 time, and Josh Downs' 40 time was pretty damn good, 4.47, I think, at the combine. So that's pretty damn good. Didn't see it on film. Didn't see that type of speed on film. Again, not making people miss at that size would be my main concerns. You guys let me know if you listen this long, if you share my concerns. There's a couple people in our Discord that are like, man, I think he's the best receiver in the draft. Very smooth, very professional, great hands, elite hands, can get open, understands every coverage. I got no problem if that's someone's evaluation. My problem would be, asking those people, well, how would you feel drafting him at 17 or 14 if he doesn't make people miss? And if he stops his routes often, and he's 5'9", 171. Great player, great college player, great career. I think he's going to have a fine NFL career, don't get me wrong. I'm not sure what your NFL team is, where they're drafting. In my opinion, he will probably be gone by 40. He should be. He probably will be gone by 34, 35, somewhere in that range. I think it's entirely possible that some team picks him earlier because they see a lot of the traits that are consistent, and they want a guy who's a singles hitter playing in the slot who's reliable and just never drops the damn football. If you guys think other people would appreciate this breakdown on Josh Downs' prospect profile, please consider sharing a link on social media to help the video get more reach.